Kalyane Niratam Karunamayam Namami Chinmayam Devam Sadgurum Brahma Vidwaram Vasudeva Sutam Devam Kamsachanura Mardanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Bande Jagadgurum Tvameva Mata Cha Pita Tvameva Tvameva Bandhuscha Sakha Tvameva Tvameva Vidyadravinam Tvameva Tvameva Sarvam Namadeva Deva Tvameva Sarvam Gurudeva Deva. Hari Om. We are doing the Panchadashi, 7th chapter, Trupti Deepa Prakaranam. We are at the sloka 63. Let's chant that sloka. Janmadi karanatvakhya Janmadi karanatvakhya Lakshanena Bhruguh Pura Lakshanena Bhruguh Pura Parokshena Gruhitvatha Parokshena Gruhitvatha Vicharat Vyakti Mokshata Vicharat Vyakti Mokshata. So Janmadi karanatvakhya Lakshanena Bhruguh Pura. So Pura in the olden days, the Bhrugu Maharshi, see Janmadi Karanatvakhya Lakshanena. So he was taught by his father Varuna. He says, what is, please teach me that. Hey Bhagavan, please teach me that knowledge. So he says, Yatova imani bhutani jayante ena jatani jivanti yat prayam tabisham vishanti tad vijnasasva. Inquire into that. And that Brahmeti, that's Brahman. So inquire into the nature of Brahman. That was the teaching. And the teaching was given by the Lakshana, which is called Tadastha Lakshana. Tadastha Lakshana is the incidental qualification, not even a real qualification, incidental qualification of Brahman. So Brahman is creator, sustainer and destroyer is only an incidental qualification. So in all the scriptures, what is God? God is defined as the Jagat Karta Ishvaraha. God is creator, is Ishvara is who is the one who created. So, but who is the one who is created is only according to our scriptures. Creation is not really real. It's only tatastham. You have to use this as a means to find out. And when you found out there is no creation even. That's the whole aspect involved. Because it is a tatastham is only incidental qualification. So we have the Tatastha Lakshanam and we have Swarupa Lakshanam. Both are given in the Taitiropanishad. And here it's given only Tatastha Lakshanam for the Bhrugu to inquire. Because this helps to find out what is the nature of the truth. So Tatastha Lakshanam example is that, the house, John's house is where right now the bird is sitting. That's John's house. So John's house is being pointed out by a bird which is sitting there. Not that bird sits always there. It's not a Swarupa Lakshanam of John's house. It so happened that the bird happened to sit there and that was convenient for me to indicate what's John's house. Otherwise it's difficult to know what John's house is. So next time you cannot go and see where the bird sits, that is John's house. That's not a Lakshanam of John's house. It is only Tatastha Lakshanam, incidental qualification. So even this Janmadi, Janma, Sthiti, Laya, Janmadi, this of Brahma Sutra also defines the Brahman. This is Adhato Brahma Jignasa. Then therefore inquire into nature of Brahman. So what is that Brahman? It says Janma Jasya Yataha, that because of which Janma Adi. Janma means Janma, Sthiti, Laya, and that is from which the whole universe came, by which it is sustained, into which it dissolves. And that statement of Brahma Sutra came from this Taittiriya Upanishad statement Yato va imani bhutani jayante yena jatani jivanti yat prayam sabhisham visanti tad vijnasasva tad brahmeti, from which the whole universe came. And that was a teaching by the father, the Varuna, to his son Bhrugu, and it was in long time ago. So using that, Bhrugu went out and inquired. Go and inquire. So no more further teaching. Says, inquire what is that because of which the whole universe came, by which it is sustained, into which it goes back. and after many inquiries and coming back and sending back again and again, says parokshena gruhitva. Indirectly he gained the knowledge first, but by vichara, by constant inquiry, vyakti mokshata, so gets liberated by the direct knowledge. So indirect knowledge that Brahma asti, and the direct knowledge that I am that Brahman, he came with the vichara, by inquiry. How did he inquire? He inquired essentially using one at a time, one kosha at a time, and he's going to talk about in the next verse. Yajjapi tvamasi tatra, yajjapi tvamasi tatra, vakyo nocha bhrugo pita, vakyam nocho bhrugo pita, tadapyannam pranamiti, vicharyasthala muktivan. Together, yajjapi tvamasi tyatra, vakyam nocho bhugo pita, tadapyannam pranamiti, vicharyasthala muktavan. Yajjapi, so even though the Bhugo Pita, the father of Bhrigu, Atra, Tvamasi, there, Tvamasi, you are that Brahman, iti adi, says Pita has not been taught. Iti Brahman, iti Vakyam, na uche. So, iti Vakyam, no che, this is na uche. This sentence was not given to the student. All he was told is, they inquire, go and inquire. What do you inquire? From which the whole universe came, by which it is sustained, into which it goes back. Go and inquire, find out what is that. That was the statement of the father to the son. So he has a confidence in the son that he has come up with the proper analysis. And that's why Tadhapi, even though only father told about from which the whole universe came, by which it is sustained, into which it goes back, what did Bhrigu Maharshi do? Bhrigu Maharshi started with Tadha api annam pranamiti vicharya sthala muktavam. So the places of Brahman, where is Brahman? What is Brahman? He thought first is annam brahmeti. So pranam brahmeti. So he was going one by first. He says annam brahmeti and came back to the teacher. Says no, go inquire again. So he rejected the answer and asked him to go inquire further. So he comes back, pranam brahmeti. Again he is sent back to inquire. So why is he coming with the annam pranam maya? He is talking about the panchakoshas. That is what he has within the body. And even though you inquire about the whole universe came, by which it is sustained, into which it goes back, there is no you are that was not teaching there given. But still the student inquires, starting with from his own body, mind, intellect, from his panchakoshas. That's what the statement here. So, tadhapi, even though the teacher does not, he gave you only indirect knowledge, and student is arriving with the pratyaksha, the immediate knowledge, as the aparoksha jnanam is coming up by inquiring whether annam is there, the food from which I came, by which I am sustained, into which I go, become one, is that Brahman, and so on and so forth. So in the next sloka it's further clarified. Anna pranadi koseshu suvicharya punah punah ananda vyakti mikshitva brahma lakshapyayujat. Together, anna pranadi koseshu suvicharya punah punah ananda vyakti mikshitva brahma lakshapyayujat. So anna pranadi koseshu suvicharya. So having analyzed that, is it Annamaya Kosham or a Pranamaya Kosham or Manomaya Kosham or a Vijnanamaya Kosham or Anandamaya Kosham. So Koshas, Adi, one by one he came up with, that was rejected. Subicharya, having discarded after inquiring into that, Punah Punah, again and again. So the Bhrigu comes after inquiring, I have understood, and he comes back, says, no, you have not understood, go back again and inquire. So that means he rejected that conclusion, and therefore you have to go beyond that conclusion. So he went back. My father rejected it, so there must be something higher than that. So like that, each Annamaya, Pranamaya, Adi Koseshu, Subicharya, Punah Punaha, Ananda Vyaktim Ichitva. So Ananda Vyaktim Ichitva. Having directly experienced that Ananda is I am, that Swarupa Lakshanam, Brahma Lakshanam, Api, Ayuyujad. So was employed, says that Ananda Swarupa Lakshanam itself coming up with I am that which is beyond the koshas, the one which illumines the all koshas. Koshas come and go. Therefore, he arrived at what is the nature of Brahman and Tattvamasi statement, essentially. So he came up with the Swarupa Lakshanam by rejecting what is not Brahman. Through the indirect knowledge, he came up with the direct knowledge. And that's what is being discussed by the Vidyaranya. So therefore, the indirect knowledge was not negated, but it helps, and that's how the scripture starts and is in the Sadeva Saumya, first indirect knowledge is given, but there the direct instruction is also given after going through indirect knowledge. Because you are that, in fact, that from which the whole universe came, by which it is sustained, into which it goes back. Because Sadeva Saumya idamagramasid. The existence alone was there before creation. Now, after the creation, the same existence now expressing in terms of varieties of names and forms, and you are that, and essence of all that is you. And that's what the Uddalaka taught. Whereas in the case of the Bhrigu Maharshi, his father only gave you Tadastha Lakshanam, and he arrived at this Swarupa Lakshanam. So we'll go 66. Satyam Jnanam Anantancha, Satyam Jnanam Anantancha, Ichyevam Brahma Swalakshanam, Ichyevam Brahma Swalakshanam, Uktva Gruha Tatvena, Uktva Guhati Tatvena, Koseshvatat Pradarsitam, Koshetat Pradarsitam. Together, Sattvam Jnanam Anantancha, Ichyevam Brahma Swalakshanam, Uktva Guhati Tatvena, Kosheshvatat Pradarsitam. So, Satyam Jnanam Anantancha iti Brahmaheva Swalakshanam Uktva. Etad, this Brahman is Koseshu Guha Atitaha Tattva Ena, and Pradarsitam, Kosha Pradarsitam. So it's Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma. In the Taittiriya Upanishad, it starts with Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma. So that becomes a Swarupa Lakshanam of Brahma. So we have a Tatastha Lakshanam and we have a Swarupa Lakshanam. So Tatastha Lakshanam is Yatova imani bhutani jayante ena jatani jivanti yat prayamta visham vishanti tad vijnasasva tad brahmeti. That is Brahman. That has to be inquired, from which the whole universe came, by which it sustained, into which it goes back. That is called Tatastha Lakshanam. What is Swarupa Lakshanam? Swarupa Lakshanam is its intrinsic nature is Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma. So Satyam Jnanam Anantam is not a Lakshana, means it's not a attributes of Brahman as some philosophers declare, because it is Anantam. Anantam is infinite. Infinite cannot have attributes. Only finite things have attributes, but not infinite. So this attribute is that which object has, and therefore every object must have an attribute. This is how Nyaya philosophy starts, and therefore the Visishtadvaita subscribes to that, saying that every object must have attributes, and considering that Ishvara is also an object of worship, and therefore he is objectified, therefore he should have an attribute. And what are the attributes of Ishvara? This is Ananta Kalyana Gunam. His infinite auspicious qualities are attributes of the Ishvara. So from the point of the Nirguna is interpreted as he does not have dosha gunam. Therefore that's essentially how the Brahman is being defined as he has attributes. Whereas the Shankara says Satyam Jnanam Anantam. Satyam Jnanam Anantam, it tells you that because of its infinite, Anantatvat, therefore Nirgunaha. Because of infinite, infinite cannot have attributes. Infinite is itself is not an attribute. Infinite is, it only says that it's not a finite. It's a negation of the finiteness to it, but that's not an attribute of the object, of the Brahman. Same way Satyam. Satyam is existence. So Jnanam, consciousness, and Anantam. So in all these things, the Satyam Jnanam is a attribute of Brahman. Says no. If Sat is an attribute, if you consider that Sat is an attribute, Sat is means all. Existence is an attribute of Brahman, then we have a problem. What's the problem? If it is an attribute, then the locus should be different from the attribute. Locus means the one who has the attribute is different from the attribute itself. Like a blue lotus. Blue is the attribute of lotus, and lotus is different from blue. So therefore, blue is the lotus is the locus for which the blueness is. And therefore, the attribute must be different from the Visheshana must be different from the Visheshya. That's the law. So if Sat is a Visheshana, if existence is a Visheshana, it has to be locused on some Visheshyam, that means an object that should have this attribute Sat, and that attribute must be different from Sat. So what is different from Sat? Only different from existence is only non-existence, because everything else exists. So if the existence, if there is a Visheshya, the Visheshya, the object which is different from a Visheshana Sat, then that Visheshya should be non-existent, and non-existent cannot be having an attribute existence. So it's a ridiculous statement. Therefore Sat cannot be an attribute, it is an intrinsic nature. That's why existence alone was there before creation. So it is not an object, it is the pure existence is ekameva advitiyam. It is infinite, it is no sajati vijati swagada veda rahitam, because it is anantatva, because it is infinite, and therefore it cannot have attributes. And that's essentially Anantatvad. That's what the Shankara says. It is a Swarupa Lakshanam. It is an intrinsic nature of that. In the mathematics, we have the necessary qualifications and sufficient qualifications and incidental qualifications. So we have three types of qualifications, attributes. Incidental qualification, we just said Tadastha Lakshanam is a crow is sitting on the John's house. That is, or the pot on the chair, pot on the table. So different from the pots which are not on the table. So that becomes a Tatastha Lakshanam. It's not that pot has to be always associated with the table. Pot is only Samyoga Sambandha, only contact relationship, and contact can be disconnected. And therefore this is a Tatastha Lakshanam. And Swarupa Lakshanam is its intrinsic nature, and in principle, quote unquote, all objects cannot have, the finite objects cannot have Swarupa Lakshanam, only because it's made up of other products, other material. Every part that you see is made up of something other than itself. Like, for example, what is a chair? Chair is made up of wood. What is a wood? Wood is made up of fibers. What is a fiber? Fiber is made up of molecules. What's a molecule? Molecule is made of atoms, and atoms is made up of electrons, protons, neutrons, and we are still finding out what's the final particle. And what is there in all these things is, what is the Swarupa Lakshanam of that? Because it's having a parted, it can be decomposed, it can have in principle a Swarupa Lakshanam, intrinsic nature. And for convenience, for transactions, we can say its intrinsic nature is that because of which it is. Like water is H2O and H2O is water. So when we have to define the intrinsic or called Swabhavika Swarupa Lakshanam by using a converse statement. It's called necessary and sufficient qualification. Like the sweetness of a sugar is necessary but not sufficient, because if it is sweet, it has to be sugar. But whereas if it is sweet, it can be equal, aspartame, so many things are there. Whereas the H2O is water and water is H2O. That is a necessary and sufficient. Wherever there is H2O, it has to be water only, irrespective of where it is. So that becomes a Swarupa Lakshanam. So Satyam, Jnanam, Anantam. So Jnanam is consciousness, Satyam is Sat, existence, consciousness, and Anantam, that is infiniteness, each nature of Brahman, and that is essentially the Swarupa Lakshanam. And that's what Satyam, Jnanam, Anantancha, Icyevam, Brahma Swalakshanam. Swalakshanam is Swarupa Lakshanam, Iti Evam, Uktva. So having known this, Etat, this Kosheshu, so Guhatitattvena Kosheshu, so the one that is hidden inside as though hidden inside the koshas. So I am rejecting the Annamaya Kosha, go to Pranamaya Kosha, I am going inwards to find out Manomaya Kosha, that is rejected, Vijnanamaya Kosha, that is rejected, Anandamaya Kosha, that is rejected, and go that because of which all koshas are known, that because of which all koshas came, and that is the Sthula Sarira, Sushma Sarira, and Karana Sarira, beyond all the Sariras, that because of which they are all activated, and that is light of consciousness, and that is I am. When I say I am conscious entity, I am, my Swarupa Lakshanam is that which is essentially Satyam, the Satchidanandam, which is Akhandam, therefore Aham Brahmasmi. So that need to be arrived at. So by going from kosha to kosha is going inner, inside. Inside means trying to find out what that, because of which everything else is pervaded by. It's called inner, means it pervaded by the other ones. So Pranamaya pervades Annamaya Kosha, and Manomaya pervades the Pranamaya and Annamaya, and Vijnanamaya pervades Manomaya, Pranamaya and Annamaya. And the same way Anandamaya, same way, one which is more pervasive is more subtler, and ultimately what is most pervasive is I am pure Satchidananda Swarupam, and therefore I pervade as Antaryamin, I pervade the entire universe, and that has to be Pradarsitam, is shown in the analysis wise by the Taittiriya Upanishad through the analysis of Paroksha, Aparoksha Jnanam. Through Paroksha, see. So yo veda nahitam guhayam parame vyomam soshnute sarvan kaman saha. So he who realizes Brahman is in the cave of its pure consciousness, has all desires fulfilled. That's what. So snute sarvan kaman saha. So all his desires are fulfilled. Desire for what? Desire for objects. Why does anybody has desire for object? Because he wants to be happy with that. But if he is already happy, so yo veda nahitam guhayam parame vyomam, that which pervades the whole entire in this innermost self, that Brahman, that I am, which is essentially inner means it is the subtlest of all, that pervades everything, and that has to be done by inquiring, by rejecting what I am not, I have to arrive at what I am. That's essentially Guha is the cave, in the cave of one's own heart. One's heart cave. Heart is the essence of the individual heart. Essence is not a physical heart here. Essence is the heart of the problem. Heart of the problem is heart of myself. Heart of myself is I am. Because I am starts with before anything else. That is the heart, and that is the essence, and in that I discover that I am conscious existence, that I am, and that is the guha hitatvena. So that is the guha is being coming from the scripture Taittiriya Upanishad. It says yo veda nihitam guhayam parame vyomam. So that which is all pervading, and that is in a cave. So Swami Chimanji say, what is a cave? When you go cave inside, and the ant goes into the cave of a cake, he says it sees everywhere cake, only this side cake, that side cake, that side cake, everywhere cake. That's what is guha means. So I see everywhere nothing but the Brahman only. That is Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma. That's what is being stated here. So one arrives at, even though the teacher has not taught you are that, you only gave an indirect tatastha lakshanam by janmadi, by using the janma, the sthiti laya as a cause for inquiry, Brahman. But the student came up with the answer by vichara, by coming up with the aparoksha jnanam through paroksha jnanam. And that's what you see analyzed in the next sloka as summary. Parokshena vibhujendro, parokshena vibhujendro, ya atmechadi lakshanat, aparokshi kartumichan, mischan Sutirvaram Gurum Yayau Parokshena Vibhujendro Yatmechadi Lakshanad Aparokshi Kartumichan Sutirvaram Gurum Yayau Chaturvaram Gurum Yo. So Parokshena Vibhuryo. So he goes into the another scriptural statement. Here is the Chandogya Upanishad, where the Prajapati is the teacher now, and the Prajapati is teaching, and he declared there will be Vedanta classes, and unfortunately two only people registered. One is Virochana, another is Indra. And Prajapati is so busy, and he takes a class once in 32 years, it seems. So after one class, he sent them back, and after 32 years they came back and inquired. So in each step, the students coming back, so teaching is only by the Prajapati to two students. One is Virochana and other one is the Indra. And Virochana, after the first class, he thought he understood and left. So he dropped out of the class. Only Indra was coming back again and again and again, because each time he understood as I am this kosha, I am this and this. So that was rejected until he arrived ultimately the aparoksha jnanam. So paroksha jnanam was being discovered one by kosha until he comes up with the absolute truth, and that's what when the Indra was left. Yes, now you understood, you can go. So parokshena vibhujendro. So by the parokshena, indirectly, Indra. So parokshena, by indirect knowledge, atma, self, ichhyadi lakshanat, by such and such a nature is vimuchya, this is having known by indirectly, ichha and desiring to know, says aparoksha kartum. So directly to know who is that is Yayau Gurum, approach the teacher again and again. He says Chaturvaram approach. So 4 times Indra goes, after 32 years again go back, after 32 years again. So it took a long time, and that's what the Indra's, the Prajapati's time. I don't know that 32 years is by the Prajapati's time, or is it from our time? The teaching. But anyway, so there is a joke about because one day of Brahmaji is where the whole cycle of creation goes on, and when he goes to sleep, it becomes a pralaya. So many yugas are considered, and all the yugas are over. Then Brahmaji gets tired and he goes to sleep, and again when he comes back, again new creation starts. So that's how the whole creation is going on. And one day of Prajapati is millions and millions of years from our scale, because there is so many yugas of cycles. One yuga itself is big, the 4 yugas, and this is repeated cycle, and the many cycles after that only one pralayam comes. So from the point of the Brahmaji, is one day is so much, and one hour is itself is so much, 1 second is itself. So one fellow went to say, so what is 1 lakh for you? It's like a penny. So one fellow says, sir, can I have 1 penny? He says, wait a minute. Wait a minute. You have to wait 1 minute of Brahmaji. That means you have to wait for millions of years to get that lakh. So parotchena vibhujyendro yaha atmechadi lakshanat. So one who gained what is the truth about myself after many paroksha jnanam, then aparoksha kartamichan, so chaturvaram gurum ayod. So he went 4 times to Brahmaji to learn, and ultimately the Indra gained the knowledge of what is the nature of this truth, Aham Brahmasmi. So next sloka. Atma va idamichyadau Atma va idamichyadau paroksham brahmalakshitam adhyaropavadabhyam prajnanam brahmadarsitam. So he gives another example of Aitiriya Upanishad. In the Aitiriya Upanishad, what does it say? Atma va idamagram asit. Conscious I am, the self alone was there before creation. That was how it starts. In the Chandogya, existence alone was there before creation. So there has to be samanvayam, the coherency between the teachings. So obviously the existence is same as Atma. So Atma va idam ichyadau, etc. is paroksham brahmalakshitam. Indirectly the brahmalakshanam has been taught or taught in that this is Atma va idamagram asit ekameva advidiyam. So that the teaching of Aitiriya Upanishad starts with the Atma va. The Atma is what there before creation. So paroksham brahmalakshitam adhyaropavadabhyam prajnanam brahmadarsitam. So adhyaropavada. So by adhyaropavadabhyam, by the process of adhyaropa apavada, I superimpose something and I reject that as not the truth. So until then I go up to that point, then I reject that and go to higher. That's called adhyaropa. Even the Panchakoshas, this is Annam Brahmeti. So Annam is Brahman. Then that was rejected because Annam is perceived, and that which is perceived is an object, so I cannot be Annam. So that is rejected by going to Pranam, which is subtler than Annam. So in the Pravilapanam, in the rejection, I go to higher level. That's called Adhyaropa Apavada. I accept that for the time being until my mind is clear enough, then I reject that to go to higher level. And that's how we learn in physics also. We learn Rutherford model first. In the physics, we learn Rutherford model before we learn the Bohr model. Why don't they say, afterwards we say Rutherford model is wrong, then we learn the Bohr model. They say, why didn't we teach the Bohr model directly? But Rutherford model helps to understand the Bohr model. So therefore, this is called Adhyaropavada. So you learn that one, the classical mechanics, then reject the classical mechanics. When you go to the subtler objects, then you say you have to use quantum mechanics. So then why don't we teach directly quantum mechanics? You won't understand the quantum mechanics directly. You have to go to the classical mechanics, which may be applicable at a lower level or a grosser level, but for subtler things you have to go to the quantum mechanics. So this is called Adhyaropa Apavada. So same process has been used. So if you stick on that in the previous life itself, in the old position only, then you are stuck with that. Annam Prabheti, that's what happened to Virochana. He says the king of the Rakshasas says, I understood what? This is the body, is the Brahman. So let's pamper the body. Whatever the body needs, let's give everything. Because that's Brahman. He did not go into the next level, because Brahman the body is also undergoing change. It has to be changed as entity, and that he did not inquire because he is happy with that. But when you say Apavada, you reject the previous one to go higher until you cannot negate anymore. That's what is, you can negate everything, but you cannot negate yourself. The self Atma cannot be negated. Why? Because you have to be there to negate it. So Atma cannot be negated, self cannot be negated. Therefore scripture says Atma ched vijaniya. Therefore inquire into discover the self that you are. So Atma va idam ityadau paroksham brahma lakshitam adhyaropavadakhyam vadabhyam prajnanam brahma darsitam. That's so prajnanam brahma darsitam. That he could see that prajnanam brahma. That's why consciousness is Brahman. That statement Mahavakya comes in this analysis only in the Aitiriya Upanishad, and that becomes a Mahavakyam. What is it? Prajnanam Brahma. Consciousness, Atma is conscious entity, and consciousness is what I am. So whatever I am not is not conscious entity, so I can reject the body is not conscious, but the mind is also inert. Everything else can be rejected. What is not cannot be rejected, only conscious entity. Conscious entity cannot be rejected by who? To rejection can only be done by a conscious entity. So you cannot negate the consciousness. Na udeti, na astameti. So it cannot arise or it cannot set also, because if it arises, who is conscious of that arisal of the consciousness? Then there has to be another conscious entity that knows the birth of the conscious entity. So therefore it is navudeti nastameti, comes from the Drugdusya Viveka by Vidyaranya only. So Atma va idam ichadau paroksham brahma lakshitam. It's called Adhyaropa Apavadabhyam. So Prajnanam Brahma Darsitam. And in the process, Prajnanam Brahma is Darsitam. It is understood or revealed as what is that consciousness, that I am conscious entity, and consciousness is infinite, and that is Brahman. And that's being discovered in the Aitiriya Upanishad also. So he gives a different Upanishad statements to justify that you have a Adhyaropa Apavada. You accept this and then reject it and go to other one. So one by one, statement by statement. So indirect knowledge and then direct, which is called Paroksha Jnanam. Then Aparoksha Jnanam is a methodology of teaching itself that is required for the mind to go to the subtler, which is innermost, that is Guhayam, that is innermost self, has to be discovered by negating what I am not. And what I am not is negating, not that it is unreal, it is neither real, not real. That has to be understood, and that's what is the statement is. With this we stop here. We will go to the 69th sloka in the next class. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om. Sri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.